Now we're going to look at the domains of life, or how living things are organized. All living things are organized into domains of life. Previously, living organisms were classified into a 5-kingdom system. This included the plants, the fungi, the protists, the animals, and the Monera. And the Monera included all the bacteria. But then, as advances occurred in DNA technology, it was found that some of the bacteria were very significantly different from one another based on their RNA sequencing. So this kind of led to a reorganization of how living things are classified. The system that we're currently using consists of 3 domains. The domain bacteria, these are the organisms that arose first as far as evolutionary terms, and these are prokaryotic cells. The domain archaea, these were the next organisms to arise. These are also prokaryotic cells. And the domain eukarya were the last types of cells or organisms to evolve, and these are all eukaryotic cells. Let's look at the differences between cells that are prokaryotic versus those that are eukaryotic. The term prokaryotic comes from the prefix pro, which means before, and the word root karyon, which means kernel. This refers to the way a nucleus looks in the center of the cell. So prokaryotic means before nucleus. So these are less evolved cells that do not contain a membrane-bound nucleus. All organisms that are prokaryotic are single-celled or unicellular. Other types of organisms contain cells that are eukaryotic. So eu means true. Again, karyon means nucleus. So these are cells that have a true nucleus. They have membrane-bound organelles, as well as a nucleus. Organisms that are eukaryotic can be unicellular or multicellular. So if we look at the different types of cell types that are found in each of the domains, in the domain eukarya, the cell type is eukaryotic, so terms are very similar. The domain bacteria, the cell type is prokaryotic, meaning that all the organisms found in this domain are prokaryotic. And the domain archaea, the cell type, is also prokaryotic. This chart summarizes 2 of the domains of life, the bacteria and the archaea. If you look at the bacteria, all bacteria are prokaryotic organisms, which are unicellular. They lack membrane-bound organelles, and they reproduce asexually, which means they do not exchange or combine genetic material with another organism. Most of the bacteria are motile, which means that they are able to move. Archaea is divided into a different kingdom, as I mentioned, because of a unique RNA-based sequence. These organisms have many characteristics similar to that of bacteria, and that's why in the previous 5-kingdom scheme of organization, they were placed together in the kingdom Monera. These organisms are prokaryotic, they're unicellular, they lack a membrane-bound nucleus, they, similar to the bacteria, reproduce asexually. What makes them also unique, in addition to the rRNA-based sequence, is that their cell membrane and cell walls are very different. If you look at the domain eukarya, this consists of organisms that are classified into 4 kingdoms. There's the plants, the fungi, the animals, and the protists. The organisms within each of these kingdoms have cells that are eukaryotic. And some of the organisms in eukaryotic domain are unicellular. If you look at the diagram, you can see that the protists, many of the protists are unicellular. The cells contain membrane-bound nucleus, and reproduction is sexual, which means that there is a combination of genetic material from each of the parents that is passed on to the offspring. The appearance and nutrition of these organisms is very diverse, and each of these kingdoms has some specializations which we'll go over. Let's look at the kingdom Animalia. Now this is kind of the Latinized form of the word, but normally we would just say the animal kingdom. 3 key characteristics of animals is that they're motile, which means they can move, that they are multicellular, they consist of more than one cell, and that they're consumers. And consumers means that they cannot obtain energy from inorganic materials. They need to ingest organic matter. This organic matter could be in the form of proteins, lipids, or carbohydrates. One very unique animal is the Portuguese man-of-war. It's not a single animal, but a colony of polyps. It has tentacles which release a neurotoxin that paralyzes its prey. Within the animal kingdom, we find the mammals. Two chief characteristics of mammals is that they have hair as well as mammary glands. The majority of mammals are placenta mammals. Placenta mammals have offspring that develop within the uterus of the female. Placenta mammals are adapted to an active life on land. Here's an example of some placental mammals. Monotremes are mammals that lay hard-shelled eggs instead of giving birth to live young. The duck-billed platypus is an example of a monotreme. This organism has the bill of a duck and the tail of a beaver. It also has venomous spurs on its hind legs. Marsupials are mammals that give birth to offspring in an immature condition. The newborns need to finish their development inside the female's pouch. The Virginia opossum is the only marsupial found north of Mexico. Most marsupials are found in Australia. This includes the koala bears, kangaroos, and Tasmanian wolf. Now let's look at the plant kingdom. Plants are organisms that are multicellular. Most plants are flowering. Plants are classified as producers. This is because they can combine two inorganic materials, carbon dioxide and water, and manufacture sugars and starches. This process is known as photosynthesis. Energy is provided by sunlight, which enables the combination of carbon dioxide and water to produce sugar or starch. Oxygen is released as a byproduct. Here are some plants that are useful to humans. Aloe is a source of aloe vera, which can be used on minor skin irritations or rashes. American cannabis, which can be sold at medical cannabis dispensaries, can be used to treat glaucoma, nausea from chemotherapy treatments, poor appetite due to chronic illness, or seizure disorders. Many medications that are currently prescribed to patients have their origin from plant extracts. An example of this is Paxil. Paxil is a substance that's extracted from the bark of a specific yew tree. What this compound does is it disrupts cell division. This can be used to disrupt cell division in cancer cells and is effective in fighting breast and ovarian cancer. The one drawback is it would take 6 100-year-old trees to provide enough Taxol to treat just one patient. So what scientists were able to do was able to manufacture this substance in a laboratory. For example, there's a known compound that has a structure like this, and another known chemical compound with a structure like that. They can be chemically put together in the laboratory and then produce a chemical substance with the same chemical properties as a natural extract. The next kingdom we're going to look at is the fungi. Fungi consists of molds, fungus, and yeast. These organisms are not plants. They do not contain chloroplasts, which is the structure where photosynthesis occurs. Fungi are very important to our environment because they're decomposers. These organisms can secrete enzymes to break down and absorb material from living or dead matter. An example of this would be if a tree falls in the forest. There aren't many organisms that can eat and break down cellulose. Think of yourself, you couldn't sit down and eat part of a tree. But fungi will break down the tree trunk, and this enriches the soil around the surrounding area. Plants require nitrogen to grow. And so if this plant material was not broken down, the nitrogen will be locked into these structures and not returned to the soil for new plants to grow. Okay, this slide's a little graphic. Within the kingdom fungi, which consists of molds, fungus, and yeast, there are some human pathogens. Though you have to keep in mind that most microorganisms are not pathogenic. Some of the organisms found in the kingdom of fungi include mushrooms, Candida albicans, which causes thrush mouth or yeast infections, and organisms in the Tinea species, which cause ringworm. Fungi can be used to produce many different types of medicines, as well as in the manufacture of food products. The mold penicillium is the original source of penicillin. Fermentation using yeast can be used to manufacture bread, beer, and wine. Mushrooms have a whole variety of uses in the food industry. There are some fungi that can cause plant diseases, and these fungal infections of plants can cause serious crop losses. Worldwide, as much as 1/3 of the rice crop becomes destroyed by rice blast disease. Some fungi can cause animal diseases. Ergot is a fungus that grows on damp grain crops and releases a substance similar to LSD. This compound can cause hysteria, convulsions, and even death. Many historians feel that ergot poisoning was one of the underlying causes of the Salem witch trials. Fungal infections can occur opportunistically in patients that are immunosuppressed, such as those that have AIDS. Opportunist infections are infections that normally would not occur in a healthy individual without a compromised immune system. Candida albicans is a cause of yeast infections in women. This can also cause a yeast infection of the mouth, which is called thrush. Thrush mouth usually occurs due to improperly cleaned and fitted dentures, or can also cause in individuals that are immunocompromised. Tinea is a type of fungal colony that grows outward in a ring. That's why it's sometimes commonly referred to as ringworm, though I want to make clear that it's not a worm, it's actually a fungus. Athlete's foot is caused by an infection of tinea. This slide shows some of these fungal infections that can be found in humans. Thrush mouth or oral candidiasis is characterized by white patches on the tongue. This also shows ringworm on an individual, as well as athlete's foot. Now we'll look at the kingdom Protista. There are a wide variety of different types of organisms found in this kingdom, so diversity is one of the most outstanding features. Taxonomically, these organisms are grouped by their mode of nutrition. Many are unicellular, but don't confuse them with the bacteria, which are prokaryotic. All protists are eukaryotic organisms. If we look at the kingdom Protista, it's kind of loosely classified as plant-like protists, which are the algae. And notice it says plant-like. These are not true plants. True plants consist of a variety of different types of tissue and are multicellular. Algae are unicellular. Animal-like protists, again, they have some animal-like characteristics in that they're able to move. And the fungal-like protists, which include the slime molds and the water molds. Again, keep in mind, these are not true fungus. Algae are plant-like protists. They are able to undergo photosynthesis. Photosynthesis occurs in an organelle known as chloroplast. This is the shared feature that algae have with plants. Algae are able to utilize carbon dioxide and water and produce food and release oxygen. Algae may be aquatic or terrestrial. Terrestrial algae are usually located very close to a source of water. Algae are non-modal, which means they do not move. Traditionally, algae are classified based on the color of the chloroplast pigments, which may range from green to red to golden brown to brown. Algae are some of the most robust organisms on Earth, able to grow in a wide range of conditions. Protozoa are animal-like protists. Protozoa require organic materials such as proteins, lipids, or carbohydrates as a food source. Many are free-living. Some, however, are human pathogens. Protozoa are unicellular, but the cells are quite complex. Many are phagocytic, which means they're able to eat other protozoa by engulfing the surrounding organism. Protozoa are usually motile, which means they're able to move. Here are some organelles that enable the movement of protozoa. Cilia are fine thread-like extensions that surround the organism, and they move or beat together like little oars. An example of a protozoa that has cilia is the paramecium. An amoeba is an example of a protozoa that has a pseudopod. Pseudopod means false foot. The organism is able to shift a part of its cellular structure in one direction, and then the rest of it kind of catches up. The third type of organelle that enables movement in protozoa is a flagella. A flagella is a whip-like tail. An example of an organism that has a flagella is the zooflagellate that causes African sleeping sickness.